Hello everyone, this is Saurabh from EduReka. In today's session, we'll be covering all the basics of Python programming. So without any further ado, let us move forward and have a look at the agenda for today. First, we'll see how to install Python. After that, we'll install PyCharm, that is nothing but the IDE for Python. After that, we'll be covering various basics of Python programming. We'll start with variables, we'll see what are data types, then we'll see what are operators, then we'll focus on various conditional statements like if, elif, else, then we'll see what are the various loops present in Python, then we'll see what are functions, and finally we'll focus on classes and objects. So guys, are we clear with the agenda? Kindly give me a quick confirmation by writing down in the chat box. Okay, so Sanjay says he's clear. So does Madan. Alright, so Michael has a question. He's asking, why do we need to install PyCharm? Michael, what happens when you install Python? It comes with a default IDE that is called idle. But when you have multiple programs that are linked together, so in order to manage those programs in a more organized way, you need to install PyCharm, so that you'll be able to manage all your different programs that are linked together in a more structured and a more manageable way. So I hope this answers your question, Michael. Alright, so Michael says yes. Alright guys, so let us move forward and learn how to install Python. So in order to install Python, you need to go to this particular website, that is python.org/downloads, and you can see that it is available in various versions. There is one version that is 3.6.0 and there is one more version that is 2.7.13, and both of these versions are available for Windows. If you're using any other operating system, you need to click over here. If you're using Linux or Unix, you need to click here. Similarly, for Mac OS, you need to click here, or any other OS, you need to go to this particular link. So I'm using Windows, so I have downloaded this particular version of Python, that is 3.6.0. You just need to click here and it will start the download process. Once you have downloaded it, just run it, and it is like a cakewalk, guys. I'm sure you'll be able to do it. It is very, very simple. So let us move forward and see how to install PyCharm. Now in order to install PyCharm, that is nothing but the IDE for Python. I'll again open my browser and I'll go to this particular website, that is jetbrains.com/pycharm/download, and then the operating system that you're using. If you're using Windows, you need to click here. If you're using Mac, there's another tab. For Linux, there's one more tab. So according to your operating system, just click over there. Now over here you need to download the community version of PyCharm. So just click on download and it will begin the process. And like Python also, this is very, very easy. You just need to follow the steps, and I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to do it. It is very simple, guys, trust me. So I hope we all are clear how to install Python and PyCharm. So we'll move forward and we'll see various Python basics. We'll start from variables. So what are variables? Variables are nothing but the memory location that you reserve in order to store a value. What can be that value? It can be a number, it can be a word. So let us focus on the example that is there in front of you. Over here the value 16 is assigned to a variable A. Similarly 20 is assigned to B and EduReka is assigned to C. Now all of these values are stored in their respective memory locations based on the variable that they are assigned to. Now let us go ahead and execute this practically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assign certain values to these variables and I'm going to print it. So I will open my PyCharm. So guys, this is my PyCharm. So over here what I'm going to do is I am going to define a variable A and I'm going to assign a value to it, say 10. Similarly, I'm going to define one more variable and I'm going to assign a value here. That value will be a word. So let us give it as EduReka. Now one thing that you need to notice here is that whenever you're writing a word or certain characters, what you need to do is you need to put them into single quotation or double quotation. Let me tell you that Python cannot differentiate between single quotes or double quotes. So it doesn't really matter if you give single quotes or double quotes, Python will execute that in exactly the same fashion. So let us print these two values. It is a very simple example, guys, but a very good example to start with. Print B and then finally go ahead and execute this. So as you can see that the value that has been assigned to variable A is printed as 10 and the value that we have assigned to variable B is printed as EduReka. Is there any other questions, guys, till here regarding variables? Any questions? So we have a question from Siddharth. He's asking, do we need to declare the variable before using it? Absolutely no, Siddharth. In Python, unlike the other programming languages like C and C++, you don't need to declare the variable before using it. You can use it as and when required. So I hope this answers your question, Siddharth. Alright, so he says yes. So any other questions, any other doubts, guys, please write it down in your chat box. I'll be happy to help you. Alright, so we have no questions. So let us move forward and see what are the data types in Python. Now the data in the memory can be of many types. For example, a person's age is stored as a numeric value and his or her address is stored as alphanumeric characters. So Python has various standard data types that are used to define the operations possible on them and the storage method for each of them. Now let us understand this with an example. So we have a value 16 assigned to A, 20 assigned to B, and Edureka assigned to C. Now as you can see that the value 16 is a number. And what kind of a number it is? It is an integer. So it becomes an integer data type. Similarly, we have a value 20 that is again a number, and what kind of a number it is? It is an integer. So again, it becomes an integer data type. But when we talk about Edureka, it is a word, or we can say it is a string. So that becomes a string data type. So what I'll do, I'll show you various data types that are available in Python. So there are 6 basic data types available in Python. First is numeric, then list, tuple, strings, set, and dictionaries. So we'll have a look at these data types one by one. We'll start with numeric. Now what is numeric data type? Numeric data type is nothing but it is used to store numbers. So numbers can be of many types, right? It can be an integer, it can be a float type, complex type, or long type. So what is an integer type? Whole numbers that includes negative and positive both. Now when we talk about float type, all the numbers that can be represented in P by Q form, or you can say in decimals. So all of those numbers are float type. But when we talk about complex type, all the numbers that can be represented in A plus JB form. That is, A is a real part and B is the imaginary part. Now the long type, let me tell you guys, we won't focus on long type because Python no longer supports long type in the new versions. That is 3.x versions. In the previous version of Python, long type was available and it was nothing but the large integer values. So we won't focus on long type because it is no longer available in Python, and since I'm using 3.x, it does not support long type. So let us go ahead and execute this practically. I'll tell you how to assign an integer value to a variable, float value to a variable, complex value to a variable, and I will also show you the type conversion between these data types. So let us first assign an integer value to a variable. So we'll take again A, and I'm going to assign a value 20. Now I need to print this value, so again I'll type print A. Let us execute this. And yeah, it prints 20. That is nothing but an integer value that I've assigned to variable A. Now when we talk about complex data type, what I'll do, I'll again define one more variable B, and I'm going to give a value to it, say AJ. And now I'm going to print this value and execute this. So as you can see that 2 plus AJ, that complex value has been printed. Now finally, let us see how to define a float data type. I will define one more variable C, and I'll give a value to it, say in decimals, I'll give it as 2.35, and let us print this value. Now let us execute this. So as you can see that 2.35, that is a float data type, is also printed. Now what if I want to convert an integer value to a float type or a float value to an integer type? So let us see how you can do that. It is very, very simple, guys. What you need to do is you need to define one more variable, say as D, and now I'm going to convert the integer value into float value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type float and the integer value and the name of the variable where integer value is assigned, that is A, and let us print this variable, execute this. So as you can see that the integer value 20 has been converted to a float type, that is 20.0, and it has been converted into a decimal value. Similarly, I can convert a float data type into an integer data type. Let me show you how you can do it. Just define one more variable. I can keep it as E, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to type int and the name of the variable to which the float value is assigned. That is nothing but C, and finally just print it, print E, and execute this. So it was 2.35 earlier, the value of C, but when we converted into integer type, it became 2. So any questions still here, guys? We have a question from Madan. He's asking, what is complex data type? So complex data type is nothing but a number that can be represented in A plus JB form. So when I say that, A becomes a real part and B becomes the imaginary part. And what is J? It is nothing but the negative of the square root of -1. So that is what J is. So I hope this answers your question, Madan. So we have one more question from Janice. She's asking, can we convert complex number to int? No, Janice, you cannot convert a complex number to int. Neither you can convert a complex number to float. Let me tell you why. What happens is when you convert a complex number to an integer data type or a float data type, interpreter gets confused. So as to which value should it convert, the real part or the imaginary part. Same, you cannot even convert an integer value to a complex value and a float value to a complex value. So I hope this answers your question, Janice. All right, so Janice says yes. Any other questions, guys? Please write it down in your chat box. Or shall I move forward? Just give me a quick confirmation. All right, Ayushi says no question. Mayur says no question. Siddharth says please go on. Michael, Janice, Sam, David. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for the confirmation. So we'll move forward and we'll see various other data types present in Python. Now the second data type is a list data type. So lists are the most versatile of Python's compound data types. A list contains items separated by commas and enclosed within square brackets. To some extent, lists are similar to arrays in C. But one major difference between them is that all the items belonging to a list can be of different data type. But when we talk about arrays in C, they all have to be of the same data type. So if you're defining an array of integer type, you have to make sure that all the elements are of integer data type. But in list, that is not the case. As you can see, the example that is there in front of you, there is a list which contains physics, chemistry, 1997 and 2000. The first two elements are strings and the other two elements are numeric data type, or to be precise, they are integer data type. Now when we talk about indexing, like most of the other programming languages like C, C++, in Python also the indexing starts from 0. So this is a 0th element, this is the first element, this is second, and this is the third element of list 1. There are various operations that you can perform on list. So we'll have a look at those operations one by one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my PyCharm and I'm going to show you those operations. Now first I'll define a list. And I'm going to name my list as task for today, or I'll just keep it as task. And I'm going to open the square braces. Now what is the first thing that you do when you wake up? You brush your teeth, then you take bath, then after that you go to office, then finally you might go with your friends for a couple of drinks. So I'll just write drinks, and yeah. So yeah, let us keep it this way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this list. For that I'll type print task and let us see what happens. So yeah, it has printed the 4 elements of this task or the list, that is brush, bath, office, drinks. So now we can perform various operations on this list. So let us see the first operation, that is to update a particular element of this list. So let's suppose that I don't want to take a bath. I just want to dry clean myself, maybe because I woke up late. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type task. Since this is the second element of this list and we know that indexing starts from 0, so 0th element is brush and the first element will be bath. So I'll just write task 1 equal to whatever name, whatever value that I want to replace it. So I'll just type dry clean. And I'm going to print this task again. Now let us see what happens when we run this. Now as you can see that earlier there was bath present as the second element of the list, but I have converted that as to dry clean as the second element of this list. So we have seen how to update a particular element in a list. So now let us see how to find the number of elements that are there in a list. So for that what I'm going to do is I'm going to type print length and the name of my list, that is task, and let us go ahead and execute this. So it says 4. As you can see that there are 4 elements. It starts from brush, dry clean, office and drinks. So now let us see how you can print a particular element in this list. So in order to print the third element, that becomes index 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type print task and the third element, but the index becomes 2 because it starts from 0. Print task 2 and let us see what happens. So yeah, it prints office as this is the third element of the list, but according to the index that starts from 0, it becomes the second element. Now what if I want to print a part of this list? Say I don't want to print drinks and I want to print it till brush till office. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type print task and it should start from 0 and it should end till 3. So what it'll do, it'll start from index 0, that is brush, and it'll stop at office, that is index 2. It won't print the index 3. So it basically says that print from 0 till 3 but do not include the third element of the list. So that is how it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. So let us see what happens. So yeah, it prints brush, dry clean and office. It does not print drinks. Now let us see how you can concatenate two lists. So for that I'm going to define one more list and let us name it as list 1 itself, and that includes the subjects that you want to study. Say you start with physics, you want to learn Python as well, you want to learn Hadoop as well, and yeah, this is my second list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to concatenate or add the two lists. That one list is task and the other list is list 1. So for that what I'm going to do is I'm going to type print task plus list 1, that's all, and go ahead and execute this. So as you can see that it prints both the list, that is it starts from brush, dry clean, office, drinks, that is a part of first list, that is task, and after that the list 1 is printed, that is physics, Python and Hadoop. What if I want to print this list multiple times? So for that what I need to do is I need to type print the name of the list that I want to print and the number of times that I want to print after the multiplication sign. Say if I want to print this twice. So let us go ahead and execute this and see what happens. So it has printed the task list twice. Brush, dry clean, office, drinks. Again it starts from brush, dry clean, office and drinks. So we have seen all the basic operations that you can perform in a list. So is there any doubt or questions in your mind? Please write it down in your chat box. Any doubts, guys? Madan says all good. Ayushi says no questions. Siddharth says no question. Michael says no question. Janice, Sam, David. All right. Thanks guys for your confirmation. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are the other data types that Python supports. So this is the third data type that we'll be talking about, which is called tuples. Now what are tuples? Tuple is another sequence data type that is similar to the list. A tuple consists of number of values separated by commas, but unlike list, tuples are enclosed within parentheses. The major difference between list and tuples are list enclosed in brackets and their elements and size can be changed, while tuples are enclosed in parentheses and cannot be updated. So that is why we call them immutable or read-only data types. So what I'm going to do is I'm again going to open my PyCharm and I'll tell you how to define a tuple and how you can perform various operations on a tuple. So let us see various operations that you can perform on tuples. But first you need to define a tuple. So what I'll do, I'll give a name to my tuple. I'll just type task and I'll enclose it within parentheses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add certain elements to it. So I'll just type brush, then you need to take bath, then you need to go to office. Finally, you might want to hang out with your friends for a couple of drinks. So just type drinks. Now go ahead and print this tuple. So it has printed brush, bath, office and drinks. Now what if I want to update a particular element in this tuple? But I've told you earlier as well that tuples are immutable. That is, it is only a read-only list. You cannot make any changes to it. But let us see what happens if I try to make it. What if I want to replace bath with dry clean in a tuple? Let us see what happens. So what I'll do is I'll just type task and the index value of the element that I want to change. In this case it is bath, so the value of the index is 1. And I want to replace it with dry clean. Now let us go ahead and print this new tuple, that is task, and let us see what happens. So it has shown an error just because I've told you earlier as well that you cannot make any changes in a tuple once you have defined it. It has shown an error. Why? Because I've told you earlier as well that tuples are immutable. You cannot make any changes once you have defined a tuple. Let me just remove this. And now there are various other operations that you can perform on tuple like list. If you want to print the length of the tuple, so just type print length and the name of the tuple. Just go ahead and execute this. So yeah, it shows 4 that there are 4 elements in this list. Now what if I want to print a particular element in the tuple? So for that what I'll do, I'll define one variable w and I'm going to type in task, and what if I want to print office? So the index value of office is 2. So w equals to task2 print w. It's that easy, guys. So it has printed office. Now what if I want to print a part of the tuple? Suppose I don't want to include drinks in my tuple, but rest of the elements I want in my tuple. So what I'll do, I'll just type print task. I want to start from 0 till drinks, but don't include drinks. The third index points to the element drinks, but it won't include that. It'll start from brush till office, but it won't include drinks. So now let us go ahead and execute this and see what happens. So as you can see, it has included only the 3 elements, that is brush, bath and office, but has not included drinks in my tuple. Now what if I want to concatenate multiple tuples? So for that what I'll do, I'll just declare one more tuple. I'll name it as tup1 equal to various subjects that you want to study. We'll start with physics. I personally love physics. Now you want to study chemistry, maths. Yeah, let's just keep it this way. So now what I need to do is I need to add both of these tuples, that is tup1 and task. For that I'll type print task plus tup1. Yeah, let's go ahead and execute this. So yeah, it has printed both of these tuples, brush, bath, office, drinks, physics, chemistry, maths. That simple, guys. Now what if I want to print a tuple multiple times like list? So what I'm going to do is I am going to type in print, then the name of the tuple that I want to print. Over here it is task, and the number of times that I want to print. Suppose if I want to print it twice, so I'll just keep it as 2. Just go ahead and execute this. As you can see, it has printed the tuple task twice. Brush, bath, office, drinks, brush, bath, office, drinks. So these were the basic operations that you can perform on tuples. If you have any queries, any questions, write it down in your chat box. Any questions, guys? Or if you have no questions, give me a quick confirmation and I'll move forward. Ayushi says no questions. Janice says no question. Michael says no questions. Sam says move forward. So does David, Siddharth, Mayur. Alright, thank you guys. Thank you for your confirmation. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are string data types in Python. So what are strings in Python? Strings in Python are identified as set of characters represented in the quotation marks. It can be single quotes, double quotes, doesn't matter. Python cannot differentiate between single quotes or double quotes. It will treat both of them exactly the same way. So what you can do is, so I've defined 2 strings in the example that is there in your screen. First string is A, and the value that is there is master Python at Edureka. Again, the second string is B, and the value is welcome to Edureka. Now there are various operations that you can perform on a string. For example, you can find the string length. You want to locate a character in string. You can count the number of times a character is repeated. You can actually print a part of the string. You can reverse a string. You can convert the letters in a string to uppercase. You can convert the letters in a string to lowercase as well. So don't worry, I'll open my PyCharm and I'll tell you how to exactly perform these operations. So when we perform various operations on string, the first step is we need to define a string. So I'm going to assign a value to a particular variable of string type. So just type A or any variable name that you want to give and write the string that you want to display. So I'll just type welcome to Edureka and I'm going to print this. Now go ahead and execute this. So it prints welcome to Edureka. Alright. So our next step is actually to find the string length. It's pretty easy. So what you need to do is you just need to type print len and the name of the string, that is A. That's all. Go ahead and execute this. So it has 18 characters total. Now what if I want to locate a particular character in the string? Suppose if I want to see at what position or what index value L appears. So what I'll do, I'll just type print the string name dot index, and the character in the parentheses that I want to see is present at which position. So if I want to see L, then I'll just type L and go ahead and execute this. So it is present at the second index, and since indexing also in string starts from 0, so W is the 0th index, E is the first index, and L is the second index. Now what if I want to count the number of times the character is repeated in the string? Suppose I want to know how many times E has been repeated in the string that is welcome to Edureka. So for that, what I'll do, I'll just type print string name count and the character that I want to know how many times has been repeated. So I'll just type E. Go ahead, I execute this. It shows 4 times, which is absolutely correct. This is the first time, second, third, and fourth. What if I want to print a part of the string? That is, I only want to print WEL. I don't want any other elements of the string. So what I'll do, I'll just type print name of the string, the start and the stop index. It should start from the 0th index and it should end till the 3rd index, that is C. So in that way, it won't print C, it will print only till L. Go ahead, execute this, and yeah, it shows WEL. Now what if I want to reverse the strings? So for that, again, what I'll do, I'll just type print A -1. So this index -1, what happens, let me tell you guys, this is a string. Alright, so indexing starts from 0, 1, 2, 3. Similarly, the reverse indexing starts from -1, -2, -3. And that is the reason why I have written -1 here. Now let us go ahead, execute this. So yeah, it has reversed the string. What if I want to convert the letters of the string into uppercase? So what I'll do, I'll just type print A dot upper. Just go ahead, execute this. So yeah, it has converted the letters of the string into uppercase. Similarly, I can convert them into lowercase as well. But since my string is already in lowercase, so it won't show the difference, but it will actually do it if you have a string that is in uppercase. So lower, go ahead, execute this. Yeah, it does convert in lowercase. Now what if I want to concatenate multiple strings? For that, what I'll do, I'll just type print A plus, say if I want to add Python to it, so I'll just type Python. Go ahead, execute this. So yeah, Python is added to this particular string. Now if I want to print this string multiple times, say I want to print it thrice, that is the string A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type print A and the number of times that I want to print it. So I'll just say if I want to print it thrice, so I'll type 3. Go ahead, execute this. So it has printed it thrice. Welcome to Edureka, welcome to Edureka, and again welcome to Edureka. So these were all the basic operations that you can perform on a string. So I hope we all are clear what are strings and what are the various operations that you can perform in strings. Alright, so Madan says yes, Ayushi says yes, Janice says no questions, Sam says no questions. Alright, fine guys. So let us move forward and see what are the other data types that Python supports. So what are set data types in Python? Set is an unordered collection of unique items. Set is defined by values separated by comma inside the curly braces. So items in a set are not ordered, but all of them are unique. So what happens is, suppose if you have a list that contains a particular element that has been repeated multiple times, when you convert that into a set, so it will be present only once. Let me show you with an example. Suppose you have a string that is welcome to Edureka and it has only one element in it, and I've converted that to a set. So it will actually remove all the repeated elements of this string. So if I have E that has been repeated 4 times, so it will print it only once. So basically the difference between a set and a list is that in set you use curly braces to define it or declare it. Apart from that, all the elements of a set have to be unique. You cannot have the repeated elements in a set. It will actually convert them into unique items. So let me just show you how to do that. I'll again go to my PyCharm. So let me first actually declare a list. So let me give a variable name to that list, that is L, and I'll have certain elements that are repeated multiple times, say S, then again S, then I'm going to type in D. Now I'm going to convert this list into a set. How I'm going to do is I'm going to define one more variable and I'm going to write in set and the name of the list, that is L. Now let us go ahead and print this set G. So yeah, it prints only D and S. It does not print S and S because S has been repeated multiple times. So it has printed S only once. So I hope we all are clear with what are set data types and what is the difference between set, list and tuples. If you have any doubts, please write it down in your chat box. Madan says no doubts. Ayushi says no doubts. Janice says no doubts. Everything is clear. Sam says everything is clear. David says no questions. Alright guys, so we'll move forward and we'll see what are dictionary data types in Python. So what are dictionaries? Dictionaries are nothing but a collection of key value pairs. There's one key and there's a value that is attached to that key. So that key can be of almost any Python type but are usually numbers or strings. Values on the other hand can be any arbitrary Python object. It can be anything. It can be a number, it can be a string, anything. Now let us understand this with an example that is there in front of you. Over here there's one dictionary that I've defined as D, and in that dictionary there are multiple key value pairs. So the first key is 1, the value assigned to this one or this key is value. Now the second key is key and the value assigned to this key is actually 2. So what happens when you print D1? It will actually go on and print the value assigned to the key 1. Similarly, when you print D key, it will actually go on and print the value assigned to the key, that is 2. So enough with the theoretical concepts, guys. Let us go ahead and execute this practically in my PyCharm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a dictionary. How I'm going to do that? I'm going to give a variable name A, and in the curly braces I will type the key and the value. So the first key that I'm going to type is name, and the value that is assigned to is Neil. So this is my first key value pair. The key is name and the value is Neil. Now I want one more key value pair. So the key I'm going to use is age, and the value that will be assigned to it will be 67. So what it does is there are two keys. One is name and another is age. So the value assigned to the key name is Neil and the value assigned to the age is 67. Now I'm going to print these values with the help of their keys. How to do that? I'll just type print the name of the dictionary and the key, that is name. So let us see what happens when I run it. So it actually prints the value that is assigned to the key name, that is Neil. Alright, so what if I want to see the age of Neil? So what I need to do is I need to type print the name of my dictionary, that is A, and the key, that is age. Now go ahead and execute this. So age is 67. That means the key age is actually pointing to a value that is 67. So I hope we all are clear with what are dictionaries. If you have any questions, any doubts, please write it down in your chat box. Michael says no question. Janice says no question. David says all clear. Mayur says no questions. Siddharth says no questions. All right. Thank you guys for your confirmation. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are the various operations that we can perform in Python. So what are operators? Operators helps you to manipulate the values of operands. That's all. So you can perform various operations with the help of those operators. You can perform comparison, you can perform identity, logical operations, arithmetic operations, assignment operations, bitwise operations, and membership operations. So we'll have a look at those operators one by one. We'll start with arithmetic operators. So what are arithmetic operators? Arithmetic operators helps us to perform various arithmetic operations on various operands. So what are the arithmetic operations that Python supports? Python supports addition. That is, you can add two operands, you can subtract two operands, you can multiply them, divide them, you can get the remainder, and even you can get the exponential result. So let me show you how you actually do that by opening my PyCharm and executing this practically. So when we talk about addition, let me first define two variables. So first will be A and the value will be 10. Similarly, the second will be B and the value will be 20. So now I want to add both of these operands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in one more variable C, and it will hold the value of addition of both of these variables, that is A and B. Just go ahead and print this variable, that is C. So as you can see that it prints 30, that is nothing but the addition of both of these numbers. It's pretty easy, guys, just simple basics. So now what I need to do is I need to subtract these two numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define one more variable, say D, and I'm going to type in A minus B, then print it. The result is minus 10. Similarly, if I want to multiply these two numbers, what I need to do is I need to define one more variable, say F, and I need to write the multiplication of both of these numbers. So I need to multiply both of these numbers, that is A and B. So A multiplied by B, just go on and print it. So yeah, the answer is 200. Similarly, you can perform division as well. So I'll define one more variable, let it be S, and what I need to do is I'll just type in A divided by B. Go ahead and print this variable. So the answer is 0.5, which is absolutely correct. So now if I want to print the modulus, that is nothing but the remainder, I'll define one more variable and I'm going to name it as X B mod A. Go ahead and print this X variable and let us see what happens. Now if I want to find the result of the exponent of A and B, so what I'll do, I'll define one more variable, I'll name it as Z, and I want A exponent B, that is A to the power B. So the two multiplication symbols, and just go on and print this value, that is Z. So yeah, this is the value when you actually provide an exponent to A, that is B. So this is nothing but 10 raised to the power 20. So I hope we all are clear with the arithmetic operators. If you have any doubts, please write it down in your chat box. These are pretty basic examples that I'm showing you, but it is very important for you to understand these concepts. Alright, so no questions. So we'll move forward and we'll see various comparison operators available in Python. So what are comparison operators? These operators actually compare the values on either sides of them and decide the relation among them. They'll decide whether they both are equal to each other, they're not equal to each other, or greater than, less than, greater than equal to, or less than equal to, all those things. They are also called relational operators because they actually define a relation between the two operands. So let us go ahead and execute this practically, how you can compare the two operands. Now first I'm going to show you the equal to comparison operator. So for that I'm going to define two variables. The first one will be A, and I'm going to assign a value to it, that is 10. Again, the second variable also I'll assign some value, that is 10. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a conditional statement, that is if. I'll talk about conditional statements in detail later in the session. So I'm going to write in here A equal to B, give a colon, and print A and B are same. Now what I've done here is I have defined two variables A and B, and the values of both of these variables are equal. After that I have declared a condition, that is if both of these values are equal, that is A and B, then only it will be printing A and B are same. So let us see if it actually prints A and B are same or not. So it prints A and B are same, that means the condition is true. Now if I change the value of B, suppose if I change it to 20, and let us see if what happens now. So it does not print anything because there is no condition that defines what if both of them are not equal. I hope you're getting my point. Any doubts still here, guys? Alright, so no doubts. Now I'm going to show you the not equal to comparison operator. So for that again I'm going to define two variables. I'll name it as C and I'm going to give a value to it. Again D, I'll give a value to it as 20. And now I'm going to use a conditional statement if, which says that C is not equal to D, give a colon, print C and D are not same. So now what I've done here is I've defined two variables C and D. The value of C is 10 and the value of D is 20. And the condition says if C is not equals to D, then only it will print C and D are not same. Otherwise it won't print anything. In our condition, since both of them are not equal to each other, so it should print C and D are not same. Let us see it actually prints that. So yeah, it prints C and D are not same. So what if I change the value of C and I make it equal to D? Let us see what happens. I'll make it as 20 and again I'll execute this. So it will be a blank. There's nothing for it to print. So I hope you have understood the not equal to operator. Now what I'm going to show you, if the left operand is greater than the right operand. So again I'm going to define one more variable. I am going to name it as Q. Suppose the value of Q is 20. The value of one more variable W is 30 and the condition is if. So if Q is greater than W, then print colon, then print Q is greater. Alright, so what I've done here, I have again defined two variables, one is Q and one is W. The value of Q is 20, the value of W is 30. Now the condition says if Q is greater than W, then it will print Q is greater. But we can see in our example Q is actually smaller than W. So it should not print anything. Now let us go ahead and execute this if it does not print anything or not. So yep, it does not print anything. So what if I make Q greater than W? What if I make it as 32? So now Q is greater than W, the condition is correct. So let us see if actually prints Q is greater or not. Yeah, it does. It prints Q is greater. Now what if the right operand is greater than the left operand? So in that condition, what I need to do is, in order to show you, I'll define two more variables and I'm going to name it as X and the value will be say 20 and the value of the next variable, that is Y, will be 25. Now the condition says if the right operand is greater than the left operand, that means if X is smaller than Y, colon, print Y is greater. So what I've done here, I've again defined two variables, X and Y. The value of X is 20, Y is 25. And if X is smaller than Y, or you can say if Y is greater than X, which is actually correct because 25 is greater than 20, then it will print Y is greater. So let us see if it actually does that. So yeah, it prints Y is greater. Now let us go ahead and actually make Y smaller than X and see what it will print. I'll make it as 10. So yeah, it does not print anything. The space is blank because I have not defined that condition. So I hope you have understood this comparison operator. Now the next operator we'll be focusing on is the left operand is greater than or equal to the right operand. So now I'm going to show you the greater than or equal to operator. So for that, I'm going to define two variables. I'm going to name the first variable as P and I'm going to give a value to it. The second variable is Z and the value to it that I'm going to give is 20. Now I'm going to define a condition, that is if P is greater than or equal to Z, colon, print P is greater or equal to Z. What I've done here is I've defined two variables P and Z. The values of those variables are 10 and 20 respectively. And this condition says that if P is greater than or equal to Z, then print P is greater or equal to Z. So as you can see, neither P is greater than Z nor equal to Z. Then it should print a blank value. So let us see if it does that. So yeah, it does not print anything. Now what if I make P greater than Z? Let us see if it actually prints P is greater than or equal to Z. So I'm going to type in 30 and I'm going to execute it and yep, it prints P is greater or equal to Z. What if I make P equal to Z? Then I'll type in 20 and now let us go ahead and execute this. Then again it says P is greater than or equal to Z. So our next comparison operator says that the right hand side operator is greater than or equal to left. So at that time what I'm going to do is I'm going to define two more variables. and those variables will be j, the value is 30, and one more variable I whose value is say 40. Now the condition is if j is less than or equal to I colon print I is greater than or equal to j. So what I've done here, guys, I have defined two variables, j and I, whose values are respectively 30 and 40. Now the condition says if j is smaller than equal to I, then it will print I is greater than or equal to j. As you can see that I is currently greater than j, so it should print I is greater than or equal to j. Let us see if that happens. So yeah, it prints I is greater than or equal to j. Now what if I make I equal to j? Then also it should print the same thing. Let us see if it does that or not. Yup, it prints the same thing, that is I is greater than or equal to j. Now what if I make it less than j? I make it as 20. So let us see if it prints now. No, it won't. It is a blank space. I mean, there's nothing for it to print. So I hope we all have understood the comparison operators. Any doubts, guys, please write it down in your chat box. Alright, so no doubts. So I'll move forward and we'll see various other operators that are there in Python. The assignment operator is actually used to assign value to an operand. So let us have a look at the various assignment operators that are present in front of you. So first is A equal to B. Now what happens here? The value of B is assigned to A. Now the second is A plus equal to B. Over here what happens? The value of A becomes equal to A plus B, as you can see it over here. So it is nothing but A equals to A plus B. The value of A plus B is given to A. Now there is A minus equal to B, which means that A is equal to A minus B. So whatever the value of A minus B is, it gets stored in A. Similarly, A multiplied equal to B means that A equals to A into B. So whatever the value of A into B is, gets stored in A. Similarly for divide as well, and when we talk about exponent, the same thing repeats. So let us go ahead and execute this practically in my PyCharm. So our first step here is to assign certain values to variables. So I'll define three variables. I'll assign value 21 to variable A, then 10 to variable B, then to the variable C, I'll assign a 0 value. Alright, so our next step is to actually add the left hand side result and the right hand side result and store it in the left hand side operand. So our next step is actually add the right hand side operand to the left hand side operand and store the result in the left hand side operand. So let me show you how to do that. Now first what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign C equal to A plus B, and now I'm just going to type print C. Go ahead and execute this. So this is nothing but a normal addition operator that I'm showing you, that is 31. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the value of C. I'm going to assign a different value to C. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in C plus equal to A. Now what does that mean? It means that C is equal to C plus A. So whatever the value of C plus A will be stored in C. So let me show you if it actually happens or not. Just type in print C and go ahead and execute this. So after this our value was 31. So when I add 31 to A, that is 21, so the value becomes 52. So let us see if that actually happens or not. So yeah, it becomes 52. The value of C becomes 52. Similarly, I'm going to show you the subtraction operation. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in C minus equal to A. That means C is equals to C minus A. Go ahead and print this. 52 minus 21, whatever the result will be, stored in C. Let us see if that happens. 52 minus 21 is actually 31. That gets stored in C. Similarly, we can perform the multiplication as well. So for that, I need to type in C multiply equal to A, which means nothing but C into A is equal to C. C is equal to C into A. In that case, the value comes when you multiply C with A, it's getting stored in C again. So let us see if that happens. Print C. So earlier the value of C was 31. So 31 into 21. Let us see what will be the result. So it is 651. Now I'll show you how to divide as well. It is pretty much similar. Just go on C slash equal to A. So this means C divided by A should be stored in C. So we know that value of C is 651. So it will be divided with 21, and let us see what is the answer to it. So yeah, what does that mean? That means whatever the value of C divided by A will be, it will be stored in C. Let us just print C and see what happens. So yeah, the value is 31. Now what if we perform the modulus operation? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in C mod equal to A, which means that C mod A should be stored in C. Now let us print this C. So yeah, it prints successfully. Now even I can perform the exponential operation. For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in C multiply symbol equal to A, which means nothing but C to the power of A should be stored in C. Go ahead, print it and see what happens. So this is the answer to the exponential value. So we have seen all the assignment operators that are there in Python. Do you have any doubts? Please write it down in your chat box and I'll be very happy to help you. Madan says looks good. Ayushi says no doubts. So does Siddharth and Mayur. Janice says everything's fine. Please move forward. Sam says no doubts. David says no doubts. All right. Thank you guys. So I'll move forward and we'll see what are identity operators. So identity operators compare the memory locations of two objects. There are two types of identity operators. One is, another is not. In is identity operator, it evaluates the result to true if the variables on both the side of the operators are pointing to the same object, or you can say they are pointing to the same value. But when we talk about is not, it will give the value as false if the variables on both the side of the operators are pointing to the same object. So it is totally opposite of is. And I'll open my PyCharm and I'll practically show you how identity operator works. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define two variables. One is A and I'll assign a value to it. Another is B and I'm going to assign one more value to it, say 12. And now I'm going to use the if condition that I've used earlier as well, but I've told you that I'm going to explain you these conditional statements, for example, if, else, later in the session. So for the time being, I'll just type if A is B. That means if both of them point to the same object or to the same value, then print. What I'm going to print? I'm going to print A is present in B. That's it. So if both A and B point to the same object, this statement will be printed. Now let's see if that happens or not. No, it doesn't happen because both the values are different. As you can see, A is 10, B is 12. And let us see if A is present in B. So let us go ahead and run this. So yeah, it prints A is present in B. That means both A and B point to the same object. Now when I talk about is not, what happens, I'll declare two more variables. Say one is P and I'm going to give a value to it. Another is Q. Now I'm going to give another value to it, say 10. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the if condition again, and over here I'll type if P is not present, if P is not Q. Now what does that mean? Now what does that mean? If both of them point to different objects, or you can say different values, then print P is present in Q. Now let us go ahead and execute this. So it is not printing anything. Why is that? Because both of the variables, that is P and Q, are pointing to the same object, that is 10 and 10 respectively. So now what I'll do, I'll change the value of Q and see if it prints P is present in Q or not. So yeah, it says P is present in Q because both of these variables are pointing to different objects, or you can say different values. So I hope you have understood is and is not operator. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Alright, so Madan says no doubts, so does Ayushi. Even Siddharth has no doubts, Sam, Janice. Alright, cool guys, thanks for the confirmation. So we'll move forward and see various other operators in Python. So Python's membership operator tests for membership in a sequence, such as strings, lists, or tuples. Mainly there are two types of membership operators. One is in, another is not in. So in operator, it actually gives the value true if it finds a variable in the specified sequence, and it will give false otherwise. What does that mean? If the in operator is able to find that that value is present in a string that it is pointing to, or in a list or in a tuple, then it will give you a true result. But otherwise it will give you a false result. But when we talk about not in, it is totally opposite. It will give you a true value if it does not find that particular element in the list or in the tuple or in the string, and it will give you a false value otherwise. So both in and not in are totally opposite of each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this practically. I'll again go to my PyCharm. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define one variable. Let it be 10, and I'm going to define one list as well. And there are certain elements in this list, say 10, 20, 30, 40. All right. So now again, I'm going to use the if statement, and in that if statement, I'll write if A in list. So if A in list 1, sorry, and now give a colon. So what does this mean? If it is able to find the value A, that is 10, in the list 1, then it will move forward and it is going to print this that I'm going to type. It will print A is present in list. So now let us execute this and see what happens. So yeah, it prints A is present in the list because the value of A is 10, and in list also there is one value that is 10. What if I change the value of this variable and I keep it as 1? So let us see what happens. What it will print now? It won't print anything because the condition itself is not true, because none of the elements of the list are actually equal to the value of that particular variable. Now let us take one more example to explain you what exactly not in is. So I'm going to define one more variable, say 20, and I'm going to define one more list. I can take it as typ1, and I'm going to type certain elements in it. I'll type 20, 30, 50, 70. Now again, I'll use the if statement. If B not in type 1, colon, print B is present in type 1. So what I've done here is I have defined a variable B and its value is 20. So if this value 20 is present in this list that is type 1, then it won't print anything. This condition will be false. So let us see if that happens. So it prints nothing because the value of B20 is present in the list. Now what if I change this value and I make it as 21? So 21 is not present in type 1. So ideally it should print B is present in type 1. Now let us see if that happens or not. Yep, it prints B is present in type 1. So I hope you have understood the in and not in operator. If you have any doubt, please write it down in your chat box. Madan says all clear, so does Ayushi. Even Mayur has no doubts. Sam says it's fine. David says move on. All right guys, so I'll move on. We'll focus on other operators in Python. Now the next operator is bitwise operator. So what happens in bitwise operator? It performs bit by bit operation. So for example, if I have a value 60 and I have another value say 13, so it will perform binary, it will convert those two values into binary form, and then it will perform the operation on each of those bits. So what happens is we'll perform bitwise operation on two numbers. One is 3, another is 2. So when you convert 3 into binary form, how you write it? You just write 2 once. And when you convert 2 into binary form, how you write it? 1 and 0. Alright, so now what we are going to do is we are going to perform certain bitwise operations. So bitwise operations means on every bit, on each bit we'll perform certain operation. So suppose if we perform bitwise AND operation, so what will happen if we AND 1 and 0, it will be 0. If we AND 1 and 1, it will be equal to 1. So this is what? This is equal to 2. So Madan is asking me, so 3 and 2 is 2. Madan, what happens is if you perform the bitwise AND operation, then it will be equal to 2. But when you're performing logical AND operation that I'm going to tell you later, that won't be the case. Alright, so we have performed bitwise AND operation. Suppose if we want to perform OR operation also, now what will happen in OR operation? If 1 and 0, if we OR both 1 and 0, what will be the answer? The answer will be 1. Similarly, OR 1 or 1, it will be equal to 1. You getting it? Now when we perform XOR operation, 1 and 0 equal to 1, but 1 and 1 equal to 0. So it is equal to 1 now. When we perform NOT operation, then you just perform the Now if we perform the NOT operation on any of these values, say if you're performing NOT operation on 3, so NOT of 3 will actually give you the complementary value of this particular binary. So NOT of 3 will give you the complementary value. So it will be equal to 0. Don't worry guys, I'll actually show you practically how you can do it in the PyCharm. So we'll perform bitwise AND operation of the same number that we have taken, that is 3 and 2. So first we'll define a variable A and I'll give a value 3 to it. Now I'm going to define one more variable and I'll give a value 2 to it. So now I'm going to define one more variable C and I'm going to perform a bitwise AND operation. So what I'll do, I'll just write A and B. Now I'm going to print this C and we'll see what happens. It should print 2 as we have seen in the example in the slides itself. So yeah, it prints 2. Same goes for OR operator as well. So if I define one more variable, say D, and I write A or B, and now when I print this D value, it should give me 3. And it does. Now when I talk about XOR, it should give me 1 as we have seen earlier as well in the slides when I was explaining you with the pen. So what I'll do, I'll type one more variable and I'm going to perform the XOR operation. So A XOR B and now print F. Now let us see what happens. Just run it. Yeah, it gives 1. So now let us perform left shift operator on any of the variables. I'll perform it on A. So I'm going to define one more variable, say P, and over here I'm going to write A left shift by 1 position and print this particular value. So now let us see what happens. Why it has become 6, let me just show it to you again with the pen. So what I'm going to do is, so the A value of A is 3, right? So now I've shifted it by 1 bit towards the left. So what happens, this will come here. So what happens, both of the bits will shift towards left, and over this empty space there'll be 1 0 added. So when you convert this to the decimal form, it becomes equal to 6. That is how we have got 6. Alright, now let us perform the right shift operation on the same value, that is A. So I'll define one more variable Q and we'll perform right shift operation by 1 bit. Now I'm going to print this value, that is Q, and let us see what happens. So it gives me 1. Why does it give you 1? Let me just explain you. So when you perform the right shift operation on 3, it gives you 1. Why does it give you 1? When I represent it in binary, it will be 1 1. So when I perform a right shift operation, that is by 1 bit, so this bit will be coming here and the empty bit will be assigned as 0. So what it will be? It will be 0 and 1, which converted to binary is equal to 1. So I hope you have understood how bitwise right and left shift operation happens along with all the other bitwise operators. Madan says yes, and so does everyone else. So we'll focus on other operators present in Python. So now comes logical operators. So what happens in logical operators? They perform logical operations but not bitwise. They perform logical AND, logical NOT, logical OR operations. So when we talk about logical AND operation, it will return A if A is false and B otherwise. So what happens if we have defined two statements? In one statement we say that A equal to B and B equal to C. So at that time, if both the conditions are true, then only it will move forward, otherwise it will print the false value. When we talk about logical OR operation, so in that condition, if I write A equal to B, or A is not equal to B. So in that time, if any of the two conditions are true, it will give us a true value. Otherwise, it will give us a false value. But when I talk about not of A, so if I say just not of A equal to B, so at that time, if A is actually equal to B, it will give me the false value. Otherwise, it will give me a true value. So we have a question from Ayushi. She's asking what is the difference between the bitwise operator and the logical operators. So in bitwise operator, whatever operations that you perform, it happens in the bit by bit manner. You convert that into binary and then you perform it. But in logical operator, that is not the case. You are directly doing an AND operation on two numbers. You're not converting them into binary and then doing it bitwise. So I hope this answers your question, Ayushi. Ayushi says, got it. Thank you, Ayushi, for your confirmation. So let me show you how to do this practically. I'll again go back to my PyCharm. So I'm going to define a variable A and I'm going to assign a value, say 10. Now again one more variable and I'm going to assign a value, say 20. Now the third variable I'll assign a value, say 30. So now I'm going to use the if statement. For that I'll type if A is equal to B by 2 and C is equal to B plus 10 colon print condition is true. So now what I've done here is I've defined three variables A, B and C and the values of these variables are 10, 20 and 30 respectively. After that I've given a condition which says that if A is equal to B by 2 and C is equals to B plus 10, then only print condition is true. But as you can see that A is actually equal to B by 2 because when you divide 20 by 2 then it comes 10. Similarly, C is also equal to B plus 10 because when you add 10 to 20 it becomes 30, which is actually equal to C. So this print statement should be printed, that is condition is true. Now let us see if that happens. So it says condition is true. Now what happens if I make this as 31? So the second condition, that is C is equal to B plus 10, is false. So at that time it won't be printing condition is true because if any of these condition becomes false, then the condition is not true. If any of these condition is not true, then at that time it will give a blank value because there's nothing to print after that. If any of these two conditions are false, and then at that time it will give a blank value, or you can say it will print a blank statement because there's nothing for it to print. So let us see what happens. So as you can see, it gives a blank value because both of these conditions should be true when we talk about logical AND operation in order to get a true value. If any of the condition becomes false, then the result also comes as false. Now let's perform a logical OR operation on the same values. So I'll again type if A is equal to say B by 2 or C is equal to B plus 10. Then print condition is true. So now what happens here? A is equal to B by 2, which is correct, but C is equal to B plus 10 is not correct. But still, since it is logical OR operation, if any of the condition is true, it will print condition is true. As we have seen that in OR operation, what happens, if any of the condition is true, it will give the true value itself. So over here, since one condition is true, so it will print condition is true. Let us see if that happens or not. So it says condition is true. Now what happens is when it will give you a false value, it will give you a false value when both of the conditions are false. So if I convert this and I make it as say 1, now both the values are false, so it won't print anything. Let us just check. So yeah, it does not print anything. So now let us perform logical NOT operation on the same variable. Say I'll perform it on A. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type if A is equal to if not of A colon then print condition is true. So what I've done here is, if the value of A is true, then it will not execute this particular statement, that is condition is true. If the value of A is false, that is if it is 0, then it will execute this and it will print condition is true. So since right now A is not a false value, it is actually true. So let us see if it will print something. No, it does not. So now if I make it as 0, then definitely it will print something. So yeah, it prints condition is true, because if the value is false, then not will print the opposite of that, that is true. So I hope you have understood the logical operators. Just give me a quick confirmation, or if you have any doubts, you can just write it down in your chat box. All right, so Madan says go ahead. Sam says please move on. David says no question. Janice says no question. So does Siddharth. All right guys, so I've got a confirmation from all. So now we'll move forward and we'll see various conditional statements that are there in Python. Now what happens, the first conditional statement that we're going to focus on is if. So what happens is, let us understand this with the flowchart that is present in front of you. Now over here what happens, so it will check the condition, and if the condition is true, then it will execute that if code. Otherwise it will go and exit from there, and it will continue with the statements that are present after the if code. So its syntax is pretty easy. Just write if and the expression or the condition and then various statements that you want to execute. So I can show it to you practically as well. I'll go back to my PyCharm. So over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to define two variables, say A is equals to 10, B is equals to 20. Now I'm going to write an if statement. Over here I'll write A equal to B, colon, then only print condition is true. So what I've done here is I have defined two variables, one is A, another is B, and both of the variables and the values of both of these variables is respectively 10 and 20. Now after that I have defined a conditional statement in which I have written if A is equal to B, then print condition is true. Otherwise it won't print anything. So currently as you can see, if A is equal to B, then only print that condition is true. Otherwise it won't print anything. So currently you can see that A is actually not equal to B, so it will print a blank value. Yes, it does. Now what I can do is I can actually make A equal to B and check whether it prints condition is true or not. Yep, it prints condition is true. So this is how you can play around with if statement, and we have executed if statement in the previous examples as well. So I hope you are actually clear with how to use the if statement. If you have any questions with respect to this, you can ask me right now, or I can move forward and I can explain you various other conditional statements along with if. Alright, so no questions guys, so I'll move forward and I'll explain you what is elif statement. Now again, elif statement I'll explain you with the help of this flowchart. What happens is, first it will check the condition. Alright, so if condition is true for if code, then it will execute the if code. But if the condition is true for the elif code, then it won't execute the if code, it will go towards the elif code and execute this part. And finally it will move on. So syntax for this is nothing but you write an if statement and then an expression or a condition that you want, and then various statements after that. Same for after that you write elif and the expression or the condition and various statements after that. Don't worry, I'll execute this practically. Let me show you how to do it. I'll go back to my PyCharm. Now in the same example that we saw for the if statement, what I'll do, I'll write an elif condition as well. So I'll write elif A not equal to B, then print elif condition is correct. That's it. We'll keep it very simple guys. That's all. So now as you can see, I have first statement says that if A is equals to B, then you need to print condition is true. And the second statement says that if A is not equals to B, then you need to print elif condition is correct. So as you can see, actually A is equal to B, so it should print condition is true. Yep, it says condition is true. Now what if I make some change here and I make it as 21? Now the elif condition becomes correct, that is A is not equal to B. Now let us run it and check. Yep, elif condition is correct. So this is how you can play around with if and elif condition. Now there's one more condition that is called else. Now let us go to our slides and understand that else condition. Now over here what happens, it'll check the condition. If this condition is true for the if code, then it will execute the if code. If this condition is true for the elif code, it will execute the elif code. If the condition is false for both of them, then it will execute the else code. Very, very simple, guys. It is like any other programming language. Now over here the syntax is also pretty much similar to the other programming languages. You have if, then the condition or the expression and the if code. Then you have elif, the condition or the expression, then the elif code, then finally else and the statements, or you can say the code of else that you want to execute. So let us go ahead and execute this practically. I'll go back to my PyCharm. And over here first I'm going to delete both its if and elif. And now what I'm going to write is if A is greater than B, colon, print A is greater. Elif A is smaller than B, colon, print A is smaller. Else print A is equal to B. And let me explain you the whole code. So what I have done here is I have defined two variables A and B. The value of A is 21 and the value of B is 20. So when A is greater than B, then it will execute this if code which says A is greater. And when value of A is smaller than B, then it will execute this elif code that says A is smaller. Apart from that, if both the values are equal, that is A equal to B, then it will print A is equal to B. So let us check one by one. So currently we can see that A is greater than B. Now let us go ahead and print it and let us see what happens. So it says A is greater. Now what if I make B as 22? So now B becomes greater than A, so it should print A is smaller. It does. Now what if I make both of them equal and then now it should print A is equal to B. Let us see if it does that. Yep, A is equal to B. So this is how conditional statements work in Python. You have if, you have elif, and then you have else. So I hope you have got the concepts of conditional statements in Python. If you have any questions, any doubts, please ask me right now. Madan says no doubts, so does Janice, Sam, and the rest of you all. So cool guys, so I'll go back to the slides and I'll tell you various loops that are available in Python. So what is a loop in Python? The loop actually allows you to execute a statement or group of statements multiple times. You might need to execute a particular statement multiple times. So at that time, loops are very, very useful. So what are loops? Loops are actually used to execute a group of statement or a single statement multiple times. So let us understand this with the flowchart that is there in front of you. Now what happens? First, it will check the condition. If the condition is true, then it will go back and execute the conditional code. Then again, it will check the condition. Again, if the condition is true, then again it will go back and execute the conditional code or the statement or the group of statements that are present here. It will execute those, and then again it's going to check for the condition until the condition becomes false. And when it becomes false, it will move out of this loop. So you can actually create an infinite loop as well. Now loops are of three types. One is while, another is for, and the last one is nested for or nested while. We'll have a look at those one by one. First, let us go ahead and see what exactly a while loop is. So this while loop is actually used when you don't know how many number of iterations you require, or you can say how many times you need to execute a statement or a group of statement. So at that time we use while loop. So what happens is it repeats a statement or a group of statement while a given condition is true. So it actually tests the condition before entering the loop itself. As you can see it from the flowchart as well, what happens? First, it will check the condition. If the condition is true, it will go on and execute the statements that are present here. Then again, it will go back and check the condition is true or not. If again it is true, it will go and execute the statements that are present here. It will keep on doing that until condition becomes false. Then it will go on, exit, and end. That is how it works. And syntax is pretty easy. Just write while and the condition and then execute and the statement that you want to execute. Now we'll go back to our PyCharm and execute while loop practically. Now in order to show you while loop, what I'll do, I'll define a variable and I'll assign a value to it, say count equal to 0, and then the while loop and the expression or the condition, that is count should be less than 9 colon print the count is equal to count plus 1, and finally in the end print goodbye. So let me tell you what I've done here. I have defined a variable count and I've assigned a value to it or initialized the value to it as 0. So it'll enter the while loop and it will check the condition. So it will check the while condition, that is count is less than 9. Definitely it is less than 9, so it will enter the loop. Now in the print statement it says that print the count value. It will print the count value as 0, and after that it will increment it by 1. And then again it will go back and check the value. So when you increment 0 by 1, it becomes 1, which is again less than 9. So it will again print the count value, that is 1. And then again it will increment it and make it as 2. It will check the condition again. Since 2 is less than 9, again the same process will be repeated. It will keep on repeating until this condition becomes false, that count becomes greater than or equal to 9. And after that it moves out, and once the count becomes greater than or equal to 9, it will move out of the loop and it will print goodbye. So let us see what happens now. Yep, as you can see, first it prints 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And after 8, the condition becomes false because it becomes equal to 9, not less than 9. So at that time, it will move out of the loop and it will print goodbye. So this is how you execute while statement. Now let us go back to our slides and see how you execute for statement and what exactly for statement is. So this is how you execute while loop. Now let us see how to execute for loop. Now let's go back to our slides and see what exactly for loop is. So this for loop is actually used when you know how many number of iterations or how many times you actually need to execute a statement or a group of statements. So that is when we use for loop. Now let us understand with this with the flow chart that is there in front of you. So it will check items from the sequence. All right, there's a sequence, or you can say a range, in which if the item lies, then only it will execute the statements that are present in this for loop. And after that it will increment it and go back and again check if the item is present in the sequence or the range, and if it is there, then it will execute the statement and it will keep on repeating until that item moves out of that sequence or that range, and at that time it will go out of the loop and it will end. So this is how for loop works. Now let me show you practically how this happens. So over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the for loop, say for, and then the iterating variable, the variable that should be present in that particular sequence that we were discussing or that range. So let it be x in range. Now give the range as, I'll give it as 5, then a colon, print x. So now let us execute this and see what happens. So it will print all the integer positive values from starting from 0 till 4, because the range is 5, so it will print from 0 till 4. Now what if I want to print some values from 3 to 6? So at that time again what you need to do is you need to write one more for loop, and in that I'll type for x in range, say 3, 6. So it will print the values from 3 till 6, but it won't print 6. Print x. Yep. So it prints 3, 4 and 5. So what if I want to print some values like 3, 5 and 7? At that time you cannot just directly write between 3 to 8, because it will print all the values between 3 to 8 and we want only 5. So what I can do is at that time I'll just write for x in range 3, 8 and 2. Now what this 2 does is it will jump 2 values. Alright, so when we start with 3, then it won't print 4, it will print 5. So it will basically be printing all the alternate values. Now what this 2 does is it will print all the alternate values. Suppose if we have the range between 3 to 8, so it will print 3 but it won't print 4, but it will print 5. Similarly it won't print 6 but it will print 7, and that is our motto, right? So just type colon and say print x. Now go ahead and execute this. So we have 3, we have 5 and we have 7. So I've told you what exactly for loop is and how to execute this practically. Now we'll move forward and see what are the nested loops in Python. So what are nested loops? Nested loops means nothing but you have a loop inside a loop. So there can be multiple nested loops. It can be nested for loop or a nested while loop, in which there is a for loop inside a for loop and a while loop inside a while loop respectively. Or you can have a while loop inside a for loop or a for loop inside a while loop. So I'll just give you an example of nested loop. For that, I'll go back to my PyCharm. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a program that will print the prime numbers starting from 2 till 100. So between 2 and 100, whatever prime numbers are there will be printed. Now how I'm going to do that, let me show you. So I'm going to use a nested while loop here, that is a while loop inside a while loop. First, let me define a variable I and give a value to it, say 2. And now I'll write while, and the condition, that is while I is less than 100, j is equal to 2. Now again I'll use one more while loop, and the condition will be j is less than equal to I by j, colon, and then in the next line I am going to use an if statement. If not I modulus j, then break. So j equals to j plus 1. And now I'll move out of this while loop, and now I'm going to type if j is greater than I by j, colon, print I, comma, is prime, and now I'm going to type in I is equals to I plus 1. Alright, so let me tell you what I've done here is I first defined a variable I and I've assigned a value to it, that is 2. After that, I have a while loop that checks the condition when I is less than 100 or not. If it is less than 100, then it will move forward and it will define one more variable, that is j, and it has initialized it as 2. Now again it will check one more while condition that says if j is less than or equal to I by j. That means 2 by 2. If we take the first example, that is 2 only. So if it says j is less than equal to 2 by 2, which is correct, j is actually less, no, which is not. So if we check the first condition itself, that is 2 and 2. So if we say j is less than equal to 1, that is not correct, so it won't enter this particular loop. It will directly go down and it will check if j is greater than I by j, which is correct, then it will print I is prime. And we all know that 2 is a prime number. So after that, again what it will do, it will increase the value and it will make it as 3. Again it will go back and check the while condition. So if the while condition says that it is less than 100, which is true, then it will move forward and it will assign, then it will move forward, and we know that the value of j is already 2. Then again it will check the condition in the next while loop. So here 2 is less than equal to I by j, that is 3 by 2, which is nothing but 1.5. This condition is false. Again it will come back to the if statement and it will check if j is greater than I by j, which is correct. Then it will print I, that is prime. Now again what happens is, we know that 3 is prime. Now what happens is it will increment the value of I and it will make it as 4. Now again it will go back and check the condition. If it is less than 100, it will move forward. Since 4 is less than 100, so what I will do, it will assign the value j as 2, and now it will check the while condition. So while condition is true in this case because j is equal to 2 and even I by j is equals to 2. And it says j is less than equal to 2, so since both of them are equal to 2, it will enter the while loop. Now over here we have if not I mod j, then colon break. So over here it will check if not I by j, I mod j, that means 4 mod 2, then it will break, that means it will come out the loop directly. So it is not a prime number, we know that. That is how this loop actually works. This is a nested while loop. Now let us go ahead and run this. So yeah, it has printed all the values between 2 to 100 that are prime. So now we have understood nested loops. If you have any doubts till here, please write it down in your chat box. Alright, so there are no doubts. Madan says understood, so does Ayushi and Siddharth. Even David says got you. Sam says understood. All right, cool guys. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are functions in Python. So what is a function? Function is nothing but an organized block of code. So you can use that function wherever you require in your program. You can call that function and use it. So there are two types of functions. One is predefined and another is user-defined function. In predefined functions are there which are already defined by Python like print, etc. Now when we talk about user-defined functions, in user-defined functions, the user itself has to define a function and then call it. Now let us understand the importance of function with an example. Suppose you have a function add that actually adds two values. So you've defined a function that adds two values, and in your program you need to perform addition multiple times. So everywhere you're not going to write the logic to add two values, right? So at that time what you can do is you can call this function add and it will return the addition of both the operands. So I hope you're getting what I mean. So I hope you're getting what advantage this function provides us. All right, so everyone gave me a confirmation. There are no doubts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same example and I'm going to show you practically in my PyCharm. So over here, I'm going to define a function add. So the syntax for it is you write define, then the name of the function and the parameters. So I'll take two parameters. I want to add two function add and the parameters. So if I want to add two operands, so I'll just take as two parameters and comes colon. And now the logic, that is C equal to A plus B. That is, I've defined one more variable C, which is actually the sum of both the operands that are A and B. If some statement calls this particular function, so if what it needs to return, it needs to return the value C. So we have defined a function that will add two values and return the result. Now let us check if it actually does that. So now what I'll do, I'll define one more variable. I'll write as P, which is equal to add 3, 4. Now let us go and print this P value. Now what it'll do, it'll assign a value to P by going to the function. It'll call the function, it'll perform the addition between 3 and 4, and this function will return sum of both the operands to this particular variable, and finally we have printed this variable. So let us see what comes now when we run this. So yep, it gives the value 7. Similarly, you can use this function multiple times. So if I want to add 5 and 6, so what I can do is I can define one more variable and I can add it by writing just add 5, 6, print Q. Just go ahead and execute this. So yep, it gives me 11 as well. So you can call this add function multiple times. So I hope you have got the importance of functions and how to use them in Python. All right, cool. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are classes and objects in Python. So what are classes? Classes are nothing but a blueprint from which you can actually create an object. And what is an object? An object is nothing but the instance of that class. So let us understand this with an example. So we have a class employee here, and it has a function that has three attributes: name, salary, and age. After that, we have defined an object X, and it is calling this class employee, and the name of that employee is Sarah, the salary is 1 lakh, and age is 37. So finally, I've just printed all of these values. So this is just a very small example I'm giving. You can also consider that if you are writing int 10, so that 10 is an object and integer is a class. It is pretty much similar. So I hope you have understood what are classes and objects. Now let us execute the same example practically. So over here, I'll first define a class employee. Right, object. Now I'm going to define a function, say diff. So its syntax is def, initialize it. Now the attributes that are name, salary, and age. Now over here, what I need to do is I need to write self.name is equal to name. Similarly, self.salary equal to salary and self dot age equal to age. That's all. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object. Let it be X. Now I'm going to create an object X of this particular class, that is employee. So X is equal to employee. Now what is the name of that employee? Let us just keep it as Neil. Now what is the salary? He's a pretty poor employee, so he's earning around say 100 rupees. And now what is the age? Age we can consider as 90. And now we need to just print these values. So for that I'll just type print X dot name, print X dot salary, print X dot age. That's all. Now go ahead and run this. It actually prints a value Neil, that is the name of that employee. Then what is the salary is 100 and the age is 90. So that's it guys. This session ends here. We have understood all the basics of Python programming. Now let us move forward and I'll give you a quick recap of what we have discussed till now. So first we saw how to install Python, and then we also installed PyCharm, which is nothing but the IDE for Python. After that we saw variables, data types and operators that are present in Python. Then we saw various conditional statements, if, elif and else. Then we saw various loops that are there in Python, namely while, for and nested loops. Then we saw functions and we saw why are functions very important. And then finally we focus on classes and objects. So guys, any doubts, any queries still here, you can write it down in your chat box. Any queries guys? Madan says very informative session. Thank you Madan, I'm glad you find it useful. Janice says an amazing session. Thank you Janice. David says no question. So does Siddharth, Mayur. Alright, so we have no questions now. Thank you for attending today's session. If you have any questions, any queries, you can write it right now. This video will be uploaded into your LMS. So if you have any questions after watching that, you can contact our 24/7 support team. Or you can bring your doubts in the next class as well. Thank you and have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!